Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this training session for VVBs and Auditors. Today's topic is blue carbon activity requirements and mangroves methodology. My name is Anna Cugliatore. I'm the Senior Officer in the Oversight team at Gold Standard. With me today, we have Giovanna Da Ponte, our Manager Oversight, Ashwin Shailaya, our blue carbon and mangroves expert in the Standards team, and Shraddha Gurlosur, our Senior Associate in the Standards team. Today's session is a bit different than usual. As you've seen from the registration invites, it's more of a training. So it will last 1.5 hours, about 1.5 hours. And again, it will be very interactive. We will have some polls, some quizzes, and the last 30 minutes we'll be working together on a case study. So we really hope all of you will stay until the end so that we can work on it together. And before we start, then I'm going to go to the next slide. A couple of house rules. This session is being recorded, and we will share the recording after the session, 1-2 days after the session. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box. As this is a training, we have enabled the camera and the microphone. So please, if you are joining and your microphone is not muted, please keep it muted for our presenters. And if you want, feel free to turn your camera on because it's always nice to see you there as well. So I'm going to start now with a little icebreaker. Just to practice the use of the polls, because we will use them again later. So in a second, I will be launching a poll. It will appear on your screen. Your answers are going to be anonymous, and you can feel free to just select whatever speaks the most to you. And of course, enjoy the session. So let me launch a poll now. I'm a bit nosy today. Give me a sign, Giovanna, if you see it. Okay.
Yes.
So the first question is, have you been to a mangrove ecosystem before? Very easy question. And I'm going to share here with the results and submissions. So we have someone in India, and then we have somebody who has not been, me neither. So for the ones who have been, if you have any recommendation, let me know. In Vietnam, okay, nice. Very cool. Region of Karnataka, okay. Madagascar, Philippines, Colombia, super, yeah, super nice. Please, if you can, just participate, because I see now 15 responses. I see 50 people in there, so no pressure, but it will be nice to hear from you all. If there are any issues with responding, please let us know in the chat as well, because then we can help. Okay, so I see Mumbai as well. Nice. I have a few more questions. If you have any experience in validating and verifying blue carbon projects, I see 90% of you said no, okay, and the 10% yes, 9%, okay. Super. So hopefully we'll clarify more things. We will teach you a few more things today. And the third question was, what is your main goal for today's training? Majority wants to deepen the technical knowledge, and also another big part wants to learn the basic. Super nice. So we hope we can answer this today. So yeah, let's continue then. Let me present the agenda. So today's agenda, we will start with, of course, a welcome and introduction. Then we will dive into the blue carbon and freshwater wetlands activity requirements. There we have also a little quiz, and we'll be showing a video. And then Giovanna will talk us through the scope, applicability, and requirements of the activity requirements. And then Shraddha will be talking with us about the risk and capacity assessments for the blue carbon and freshwater activity requirements. Then after that, if we have time, hopefully we can take a couple of questions. But otherwise, we will be jumping to the other topic, which is talking about the methodology for sustainable management of mangroves. There again, there will be a little introduction with a video and a quiz, and then Ashwin will talk us through scope and applicability, the baseline project scenario, and guidelines for conducting spatial assessments to define eligible areas. Then we will have a nice Q&A, and that's where we will go afterwards into breakout rooms to work together on a case study about mangroves, of course. And after that, we will find ourselves in plenary again for a nice discussion. Okay, so let's move on then. Let's start. As I said, I have another question for you. So I am going to launch the poll now. Can you name some coastal and freshwater wetlands ecosystems that store carbon? Let's see what type of responses we're getting there. We have one response, but I don't see it. I'm not sure why. How do I refresh this? Oh, maybe here. Oh. Do you see the responses? Okay, I see. Okay, they're coming in. Yeah. Mangroves and swamps, seagrass, mangroves peatlands, mangroves in Cameroon. Super nice. Tidal marshes, yes. Let's go to the next question as well, which you have already answered. Thank you. So which of the following ecosystems is not considered a blue carbon ecosystem? Of course, it's tropical rainforest. Congratulations, all of you. Great, so that was very quick, I guess. I'll move on now to the next slide. And here I just would like to show you a little video to introduce the blue carbon and freshwater wetlands activity requirements. So hope you enjoy it.
Blue carbon refers to the carbon captured and stored by coastal and marine ecosystems. These ecosystems play a crucial role in removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and storing it in plant biomass and sediments, often for centuries or even millennia. In 2024, Gold Standard has published the Blue Carbon and Freshwater Wetlands Activity Requirements. The document enables eligible activities to undergo design and performance certification, including issuance of certified Sustainable Development Goal impact statements and products such as Gold Standard, verified emission reductions, and
Is it freezing?
removals.
No.
Eligible ecosystems include coastal ecosystems such as mangroves, seagrass meadows.
I'm so sorry, I'm not sure what's going on. Let me try again.
Tidal marshes, coastal ecosystems such as mangroves, seagrass meadows, tidal marshes, macroalgae, seafloor sediments and freshwater wetlands such as inland wetlands, lake and river sediments, biochar addition and phycoremediation activities. Blue carbon sinks provide a significant scale of greenhouse gas emissions removals, ensuring the long-term storage of fixed CO2 in ecosystems, while also being actionable in practice for effective climate mitigation. But how does the blue carbon economy impact these sustainable development goals? The blue carbon economy supports multiple sustainable development goals by promoting climate resilience, biodiversity conservation, and sustainable livelihoods. Let's have a closer look at some of them. SDG 13, Climate Action. Blue carbon ecosystems capture and store CO2, helping mitigate climate change, while conservation efforts reduce methane CH4 emissions from degraded wetlands. SDG 14, Life Below Water. By protecting coastal and marine ecosystems, the blue carbon economy enhances biodiversity, supports fish nurseries, and prevents ocean degradation. SDG 16, Peace, Justice, and Strong Institutions. The blue carbon economy strengthens resource governance, legal carbon rights, and community participation, reducing climate-related conflicts in vulnerable coastal regions. SDG 17, Partnerships for the Goals. The blue carbon economy drives global cooperation in blue carbon research, finance, and conservation, leveraging carbon markets and fostering multi-stakeholder partnerships for sustainable development. The blue carbon and freshwater wetlands activity requirements provide a robust science-based framework to ensure that wetland conservation and restoration efforts deliver measurable, high-integrity climate benefits. By adhering to these guidelines, project developers can contribute to global climate goals while securing financial and environmental sustainability for wetland ecosystems.
Nice. Hope you enjoyed the video. So I would say let's move on and start with the next slide. So Joanna, take it away.
Thank you so much, Anna. I hope you can hear me well. So welcome everyone to our today's training, and we will start by looking first at the blue carbon and freshwater wetlands activity requirements. This framework actually outlines the eligibility for projects that are aiming to reduce emissions or enhance carbon storage in coastal and freshwater wetlands. So also important to mention here, integrates some methodologies and product requirements under the gold standard scheme, which ensures activities can be certified, or the projects can be certified and generate sustainable development goal impact products. Next slide, please, Anna. So moving to the applicability, these requirements are actually universal with no geographical limitations as stated here on the slide. So, however, they align with the specific methodologies that define the operational boundaries. Projects, of course, important here to mention is they must ensure that no significant environmental or community harm is done through the implementation of this project, such as, for instance, avoiding disturbance to ecosystems or reducing food security. So the projects that are we really looking into, or where it's important to mention here that we to be implementing our projects aiming to, for instance, reintroduction of native vegetation or natural regeneration of mangroves, or even restoring hydrological systems. These are the projects that are mainly encouraged, and there are others, but this is just a couple of ideas on what type of projects are we looking into when we're talking about the this type of projects under this framework. Also important to mention here that this framework is also applied in conjunction with other gold standard documentation and requirements, such as the principle and requirements. When we're talking about the methodology, what we would like to revise also is our greenhouse gas emission reductions and sequestration product requirements. And in case the project developer wants to introduce a new methodology, this is also eligible and might be revising, well, would like to revise the procedure for development, revision, and clarification of methodologies and methodological tools. Next slide, please. Talking about eligibility. So this is very important to keep in mind under this framework. So eligible activities focus mainly on carbon removals or methane reduction, emphasizing an ecosystems such as mangroves or sealand meadows or freshwater wetlands. So these criteria require activities that to deliver measurable and also permanent increases in carbon stocks. So whether this is done or achieved by managing the natural regeneration of mangroves or rewetting peatlands or introducing biochar. So important to take into account is, again, the eligibility of the project. Next slide, please. And this slide just briefly presents here what are the eligible ecosystems under this framework and what are the non-eligible ecosystems. So I'm not going to I'm not going to touch upon the eligible ecosystems, as we was already briefly presented in the video at the beginning. But in terms of non-eligible ecosystems, we're talking about here on coastal ecosystems such as mudfloods, coral reefs, phytoplankton, or marine fauna. non-eligible ecosystems under this framework. And we're talking about freshwater wetlands ecosystems, wetlands used for agriculture or even rice paddies are also considered non-applicable under these blue carbon freshwater wetlands activity requirements. Next slide, please. Yes, this one is just to mention that we do have one activity requirements, the blue carbon, and only one methodology so far under this framework, which is the Sustainable Management of Mangroves, which is going to be presented in a couple of minutes by my colleague. So then we move forward to the next, please. Next slide. Yes, moving forward to the project requirements. So every project needs to follow here under this project requirements. These are, of course, the key requirements you need to keep in mind. So they need to assess goes for the assess the uncertainty, following the guidelines to the uncertainty. I mean, the Annex A in our land use and forest activity requirements. This is applicable for this. Then the next requirement, important to mention, is that also projects needs to, or all activities need to complete the risk and capacities assessment according to the freshwater and wetland activities. This will be shortly introduced by my colleague in the next slides. Then also important to mention here that all activities they need to submit clearly delineated project area based on the GIS, right, we have in place. And also, last but not least, is also this is also applicable to this framework, that a minimum of 20% compliance buffer is applicable to all carbon or blue carbon and freshwater wetlands activities, or this as otherwise defined in the methodology. Next slide, please. And last slide on the blue carbon and freshwater and wetlands activity requirements. We're talking about the requirements for the methodologies. So here it's important to mention that projects must adopt scientifically validated methods for carbon quantification. So we're having, therefore, preferably here on-site measurements to directly document, for instance, the baseline and quantification of carbon. Another methodology is, of course, and very strongly recommended, is the use of peer-reviewed publications for the quantification. And last but not least, the also applies to the framework is the application of default factors for carbon quantification described in the IPCC guidelines 2019. Next slide, please. And here's where I want to invite my colleague, Shraddha, who will give us an overview about the risk and capacities assessment, also applicable for this framework. So, Shraddha, please, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Giovanna. So, in the Q4 of 2024, the risk and capacities for blue carbon freshwater guideline was open for public consultation. You can expect the final publication soon in the coming weeks. Next slide, please. So what is the purpose of these guidelines? So these guidelines address the challenge of non-permanence, that is, the risk of carbon stored to be released back into the atmosphere. How do they do it? The risk and capacity guidelines helps us to identify risk and ensure that effective mitigation measures are in place so that the non-permanence can be reduced and high integrity carbon projects can be established. There are several categories of risk which are considered in these guidelines, that are natural disturbance, political, project management risks, financial risk, market risk, and other risks. These categories of risk are further subdivided into several subcategories, and each subcategory is scored based on the 3 factors: exposure, vulnerability, and spatial scale. Can we have the next slide, please? As you can see on the screen, the scoring criteria: exposure, vulnerability, and spatial scale. Exposure refers to the probability of event to occur. Vulnerability refers to the inherent capacity of the carbon pools to withstand such an event. And spatial scales refer to the extent the project activity or the carbon pool can be affected by such an event. These are scored on the basis of 3, 2, 1, and 0. 3 reflecting high impact, and 0 reflecting no impact. Let's understand it better through an example. The risk natural disturbance has a subcategory 1.8, pest and disease outbreaks. This has to be scored on the basis of exposure, vulnerability, and spatial scale. Since it's an high impact, an event is expected to occur more than once in 10 years, it is scored 3. Same with vulnerability, with a medium impact, 2, spatial scale 2. The multiplication of the 3 factors give you a total presence score of 12. Any score 7 or above reflects that mitigation measures are required and the project cannot move ahead for design certification unless through the mitigation measures the scores are bring down. For example, in the example, if you see the mitigation measures provided, they bring down the score to 2, 1, and 1. The product of 2, 1, and 1 gives you 2, which is 6 or less than 6. That is, it is eligible for design certification. Next slide. So every time it has to be ensured that for all kinds of subcategories, the score is below 6 or 6. If it is greater than 6, mitigation measures have to be in place to reduce the score. So what has to be done during the assessment of risk and factor? So the VV shall check the adequate identification of risk. What does this mean? They should confirm that all risks are adequately identified. They should check the justification and of the rationale provided, like if it is well explained in the risk and capacity report, and if they're providing the mitigation measures and bringing the score down, the justification should be well examined that how is it coming and how is it reducing the scores. The evidence provided for justification. So only evidences from credible sources such as peer-reviewed reports, studies, historical data, pictures, and credible websites should be considered for this. Other than these evidences, a thorough check has to be done. The accuracy of the proposed mitigation measures. The VV needs to evaluate the evidences, through the evidences, the proposed mitigation measures are adequate or not. The validity of risk and capacities and assessment should be checked at every time. The assessment done during the time of design certification should be checked for validity throughout the crediting period. In case of any deficit observed, those should be recorded as CAR, FAR, or CL as required. Okay, thanks.
Thank you,
Anna,
Shraddha.
back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shraddha. Yeah, I've checked the Q&A. I don't see any questions yet, but if you have any questions, please feel free to add them there. So I would say we can move on with the next topic, and we can then pick up more questions after the second part of the presentation. So as introduced earlier, now we're going to talk about mangroves. So we are going to introduce the methodology for sustainable management of mangroves. And just as before, I'm going to launch a poll, a little quiz, just to see if you're still there. You should see now appearing it on your screen. We have 2 questions. Why are mangroves important for carbon sequestration? And the other question is, which method is commonly used to estimate carbon stocks if mangrove is ecosystem? So I'll give you a second to pick your answers. And I see answers coming in, so let's look together. Yeah, so we have a high majority saying that they store large amounts of carbon in their biomass and soil, prevent ocean acidification, rich in biodiversity. Nice. And the second question would be, which method is commonly used to estimate carbon stocks? Of course, yeah, all of them. Remote sensing, soil sampling, and biomass surveys. So thank you all for answering. Hopefully, Ashwin now will tell us a bit more about it. But before that, I'm going to play a little video again.
Mangroves are defined as an association of halophytic trees, shrubs, and other plants growing in brackish to saline tidal waters of tropical and subtropical coastlines. They are typically found between latitudes of 25 degrees north and 25 degrees south. Pollution, extreme weather, rising sea levels, and human activities like farming, development, and dams are driving their decline. According to the IUCN, more than half of the world's mangrove ecosystems are at risk of collapse. Why does this matter? With different species of trees and shrubs along tropical coastlines, mangroves protect coastlines from disasters, store carbon, preserve the quality of coastal waters, and support fisheries. They are home to an incredible variety of life on both water and land, from fish nurseries to mammals like sloths, tigers, and African wild dogs. Their loss would be devastating for both nature and people. But what makes mangroves such powerful ecosystems? Mangroves absorb carbon dioxide, CO2, from the atmosphere through photosynthesis, converting it into organic matter that helps them grow. They trap a large amount of carbon in their roots, trunks, and leaves. But more importantly, also in their waterlogged soils, preventing it from being released into the atmosphere. Here is a conceptual representation of how carbon moves in and out of mangroves. Carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is taken in by mangroves during photosynthesis and is converted into plant biomass, including the shoot and the root systems. A good proportion of the sequestered carbon is eventually stored in the soil in situ. It may be noted that carbon could also enter the project area from outside, often via runoff or inundation by marine waters. Such carbon is called allochthonous carbon and cannot be considered to be part of the project carbon removal. The gold standard methodology for the sustainable management of mangroves provides a globally applicable framework for the reforestation of mangroves. This methodology offers precise guidelines for measuring and monitoring carbon sequestration in reforested mangroves. When mangroves are cleared, the carbon stored in their biomass and soil gets released back into the atmosphere as CO2, contributing to climate change. Loss of carbon is likely to occur within the first years after loss of mangrove forests, while sequestration occurs within the scale of decades. As we have seen, mangroves are critical for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. By protecting and restoring mangroves, we can enhance their ability to capture and store carbon, helping mitigate climate change.
Nice. Let's all protect mangroves. They're really important ecosystems. Okay, Ashwin, are you ready?
Thanks, Anna, and thanks for the wonderful video. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. So my job is to basically expose the auditors here on the methodology, which is named Sustainable Management of Mangroves. This methodology was released along with the blue carbon and freshwater activity requirements in August last year. And we are very excited about both the activity requirements as well as the methodology, because we do not see them just as a mechanism to bring about carbon mitigation, but also they could act as a bridge to both adaptation and mitigation, to climate action, which could also include sustainable action on ground to conserve coastal ecosystems. Next slide, please. Thanks. So what would be the key contributions that we see from the auditors? Just to highlight them, we all know them, but just to highlight them, one, to ensure that we have all the safeguards in place. There is a sustainable development which are imbibed within the GS systems, which are also checked during audits on ground, as well as during desk audits. We would want to focus on promoting integrity and transparency, especially since there could be wide different levels, tiers of stakeholders involved, from community members to other institutions around. Also, what additional SDG monitoring could be considered within the project design. For example, if in case biodiversity is one of the key elements, so in case SDG 14 is also part of the SDG impacts that could accrue, how well is it monitored? So there could be a lot of contribution from the auditors, not just on the mitigation part, but also on the overall health of the mangrove ecosystem. And along with it, without any doubt, the core carbon aspects like robust accounting of greenhouse gases, as well as ensuring that there is no greenwashing, there is no overestimation of the actual carbon which is being removed from the atmosphere. So we look forward to your inputs, your contribution to ensuring some of these key factors pointed out here. Next slide, please. Thanks. So the scope of the methodology is basically on reforestation of mangroves. This is one of the key aspects that I would like to highlight. This methodology does not include conservation, does not include avoided emissions, and focuses only on reforestation of mangroves. What does that mean? I'll of course explain that in one of the slides ahead. But reforestation here essentially means that new mangrove plantation can be taken up only in those areas where there were mangroves historically. So that's one of the key aspects of the methodology, which you may have to also check during your design audits. Now, reforestation of native mangrove trees are one of the applicability conditions, and there are no, it's applicable, the methodology is applicable globally. And of course, as Giovanna mentioned earlier, will have to be applied in conjunction with the other requirements of gold standard, be it the blue carbon and freshwater wetlands activity requirements and other extant requirements and tools. Next slide, please. Thanks. So this is just a bird's eye view of all the documents that you may have to check during the audit. On the left extreme are the key requirements, the core requirements of gold standard, which you will anyway have to check during the audit. The principles and requirements, the stakeholder consultation requirements and guidelines, the safeguarding principles and requirements, and gender, and other key requirements and product requirements, which Giovanna also touched upon during her discussion on BCFW activity requirements. So these are the core requirements on slide 1. The activity requirements, as far as the mangrove methodology is concerned, is blue carbon and freshwater wetlands activity requirements. The only catch is that when it comes to uncertainty assessment, you may have to refer to land use and forest activity requirements as well. So that's why it also has been highlighted here. SDG impact tool, as you all very well know, is mandatory to be considered in any project design. And the product requirements of gold standard will also have to be looked into. The templates are already listed out here. I won't go into those details. And for the VVBs, the validation verification standard is sacrosanct. So you may please refer to the specific guidelines there, and any other rule updates or any other requirements which are published periodically by Gold Standard may also be looked into. For instance, Gold Standard had published a site visit and remote audit requirements for public consultation, the draft version of it last year, and the final version will be published in the coming weeks. So such updates which are directly applicable to VVBs will also have to be referred to. The next slide. Thanks. Now jumping into some of the technical aspects of the methodology, just a caveat here. I will know details. The whole idea during this webinar is to just focus on some of the key areas that you may have to focus on during audits. So the key definitions of the methodology, the terms used in the methodology are given right in the beginning of the methodology. And there's the remote sensing based approach as far as delimitation of historical mangrove area or finding out eligible area, etc., are quite detailed in Appendix 1 of the methodology. So this slide basically explains the project region and what could be the eligible project area within the project region, and what exactly is the process to identify non-eligible areas. We'll go into further details here, but this is a snapshot of what it looks like and what exactly are the steps that a project developer needs to follow, and which will also have to be confirmed by the VVB once they are detailed in the PDD. Next slide, please. Thanks. So this is again a representation of what a project area could look like. The PD, the project developer, is required to define what would be a proposed project area, and within the proposed project area, a historical an assessment of historical mangrove coverage is to be conducted. Appendix 1 explains how the historical mangrove coverage is to be done. What this essentially means is that any new plantation, as far as the methodology is concerned, and as far as the eligible land is concerned, can only and only be taken up in those areas which demonstrated without any doubt to have supported mangroves historically. And how back can we go is up to the project developer to define. Having said that, Appendix 1 of the methodology explains the key steps. It's a two-step process. First and foremost, a course assessment, a high-level assessment using Global Mangrove Watch on the historical extent of the mangroves in the specific area. And in step 2, there are two options for the project developer. One, to use a land cover change assessment using remote sensing data. In case that there is a dearth of enough good RS data, then they could also use maps which are released by the government agencies or by other institutes which are recognized by the government agencies, which are scalable, which are of high scale, and along with it, a local consultation could also be conducted to ascertain the historical extent of the mangrove coverage. So based on the historical coverage, non-eligible areas are culled out and the eligible areas are defined, delineated. And this eligible area is essentially the project area where the carbon removal would be reported and which would be eligible to earn GSVERs and which will be certified by the VVBs. Next slide, please. Thanks. So the next few slides, we will just touch upon, we will not go into the details here, but we'll just touch upon the steps of conducting a special assessment. I just wanted to touch upon these points to also highlight that the methodology also proposes a lot of RSGS techniques to be applied. So just wanted to touch upon some of those aspects. The next slide. Thanks. So it's a 5-step process. As I explained earlier, step 1 is delimitation of historical mangroves, and this specific slide looks into what exactly is to be done under step 1, which I just now also discussed. There are technical details that one may have to look into. For example, what exactly is the elevation models applied, what exactly is the time scale which has been applied, etc., which are again quite detailed in the methodology. For instance, there are certain dates which are defined in the methodology, like the reference date, which is 10 years prior to the start of the project date, which is set aside as a date at which it has to be proved that the area cannot be is eligible or cannot be defined as a forest area as per the host country's definition to UNFCCC. The next slide. So step 2 basically is a land cover classification of the project area. And a land cover classification, again, essentially refers to what exactly was the land being used for. Is it a mangrove area or a non-mangrove? Are the two key classifications which are required. And there are multiple special indices which are proposed in the methodology, again provided in Appendix 1. So multiple vegetation indices are approved, NDVI and and multiple, and even water indices could also be used in conjunction with the indices to arrive at the classification. And based on the land cover classification, the actual area of mangrove can be clearly delineated. The next slide. So step 3 is validation, which is not a validation by VVB essentially. This is basically validation of the classification which has been conducted in step 2, which will also require either high resolution images to conduct the validation, and if there are no high resolution images, one can also apply ground truth data as well to arrive at the validation of the classification. Next step. Yeah, and final land cover change analysis is to map how the mangrove area has changed into mangrove area and area with no mangroves. So, I mean, just to take a deeper dive into this specific aspect, what this means is that, let us say the project start date is 2024. So in 2014, the area which is eligible under the project should have no mangroves. When I say no mangroves, it essentially means the mangrove there should not fall within the threshold of the definition of forest set by the host country. And this assessment is done by a land cover change analysis as well, looking at the reference date and the historical extent of the mangroves. So only those areas which fall below the threshold of forest definition, where there are no mangroves, can be taken up for reforestation of mangroves within the project design. The next slide. And step 5 is again, apart from remote sensing analysis, one key assessment which has to be done by the project developer is an assessment of drivers of mangroves to assess what exactly has been the reason for deforestation or degradation of mangroves, and what could be the various measures which could be taken up to ensure that the new plantation which is being designed by the project is not affected in any way. So the drivers of mangrove loss is also a key component, and which will also have to be assessed by the VVB. Along with the interventions which have been identified by the project developer to ensure that the identified drivers will not hamper, will not affect negatively the new area, the new reforestation which has been taken up. The next slide. Thanks. These are the eligible carbon pools. I won't go into the details, but yeah, the key ones: tree biomass, non-tree biomass are applicable in baseline. Soil is allowed. Harvested timber is not allowed. Litter and lying deadwood are again not allowed within the methodology. The next slide. Thanks. Some of the emission sources, we will also highlight that in the next slide also. So there are certain emissions which will have to be catered to. Probably can move to the next slide already, Anna, because that's also explained in the next slide. Oh, sorry, maybe the slide after this. Oh, okay, let's forget about it. So we can go back to the earlier slide.
Which one?
Maybe, but it's okay. We will reach there. Maybe we can just go back to the slide, Anna. Yeah. It's okay. Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, that's the one. Thank you. So in case there are emissions of methane, it has been found that certain species of mangroves can actually result in higher methane emission as compared to baseline. And if it is found to be significant, then methane emissions are to be accounted for. It depends on the region, the area, as well as the species which have been used, and one may refer to peer-reviewed journals, etc. And PD needs to demonstrate that the expected emissions from methane has been accounted for or is considered to be insignificant. Similarly, other emissions could do with site preparations or with management of mangroves, dredging, and other activities, especially fossil fuel emission due to vehicular movement for dredging, etc. So all such project emissions will have to be accounted for within the project. The next slide. Thanks. This is a snapshot of the baseline scenarios and also touching upon additionality demonstration. It's normal, I mean, assessment where one has to look into the alternative scenarios which could possibly be there, whether it's continuation of the pre-project land use or whether there could be other activities which could happen in the area, reforestation of areas by other means. A barrier analysis will have to be conducted along with financial analysis for alternatives and then a common practice analysis as well. The next slide. Thanks. These are the 4 approaches which are allowed by the methodology when it comes to quantification. So remote sensing, in situ measurement, models, local or regional models, as well as default values. So 4 approaches are allowed by the methodology. The approach 1 and approach 2, which are basically remote sensing as well as in situ measurement, are quite related. The remote sensing model approach here basically refers to models created through remote sensing, which are project specific. from ground data and data collected from mangroves within the project area. Remote sensing models are created, and these remote sensing models will have to be validated to be appropriate for use, and they could be applied. In situ measurement is again on-ground measurement, just like any forest project, mangrove project as well. In situ measurement with application of various elementary equations will have to be considered, along with other collection of data points from the project area. These are the key two approaches which are allowed for ex post estimations. In ex ante estimates, regional models as well as IPCC default values are also allowed. These models, local or regional data sets or models would be those models that are not project specific, but which are referred to from other projects in the region, and IPCC default values are, again, the default values which could also be used. So these are approach 3 and 4 are only allowed for ex ante estimate, along with approach 1 and 2. The next one, please. Thanks. Just touching upon soil organic carbon here. Right now, direct measurement is what is proposed in the methodology, and this is explained in Appendix 2 of the methodology. There are two approaches which are mentioned in the methodology. One is a reference from of a C4 paper, and the other one is an approach proposed by FAO. So both these approaches could be considered by the project developer for measurement of soil organic carbon. One thing that has to be noted by validators is that the methodology clearly asks for delineation of allochthonous and autochthonous carbon. So again, PD could propose whatever method is to be considered for delineation of allochthonous and autochthonous carbon within soil organic carbon pool. You might recall from the video shown earlier what exactly is allochthonous carbon. That's soil organic carbon that comes from some other site through sediments. So that has to be that cannot be considered as part of the project removal. So that also will have to be accounted for, will have to be considered in the project design. The next slide. Thanks. This is what I had mentioned earlier about project emissions. So methane will have to be considered. Site carbon dioxide emissions from site preparation or other combustion of fossil fuel will also have to be accounted for. And similarly, any carbon dioxide emissions which could arise from mangrove management, mangrove forest management will also have to be accounted for. Next slide. Do we have another slide here? That is okay. That's the last slide. So before I end, just a couple of two more points which I would like to highlight. Point 1, as I mentioned earlier, this methodology is seen as a bridge between mitigation actions and adaptation aspects. Appendix 3 of the methodology highlights how a project developer could actually arrive at the most applicable SDG impacts that they could select, how they can link biodiversity aspects to the methodology. So would also suggest the auditors to have a look at Appendix 3 of the methodology as well when the project design is audited. And along with it, may also suggest that one may also consider whether you would need any specific RS capacity to also look into the RS analysis done by the project developer during the audit of the project. Thank you. I would stop there for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Ashwin. Thank you so much. Okay, we're now at the Q&A session. We have a little bit of time before we go into the case study. So there are a couple of questions that we received. So Ashwin, I'm going to read them for you. Martin is asking, are there any plans in regards to the development of quantification methodologies / activity requirements for seagrass?
Thanks. So right now, we do not have any quantification methodology for seagrass. And in case there are any project developers, methodology developers who are interested in developing a methodology or a quantification approach for seagrass, they are welcome to make a proposal to Gold Standard. The process of developing a methodology is given on Gold Standard's website under the methodology tab. One may please explore the process there. Thanks.
Thank you. And then we have another question from Dinesh. Wetland migration due to sea level rise, does it require adjustments to project area boundaries over time?
Thank you. So in case there is any sea level rise which are predicted, it may not require an immediate adjustment to the project area, but the place where it will have to be accounted for is in the risks and capacities assessment. So within risks and capacities, if I'm not wrong, risk subcategory 1.5, as far as I recall, caters to climate change. And sea level rise is one of the aspects which will have to be considered there, and appropriate risk mitigation measures will have to be accounted for. In case the sea level rise is a high risk aspect, the whole project would be, what should I say, could be at risk. So that's one thing that you may have to consider. Project area is not affected by sea level rise in that way. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Ashwin. Okay, I don't see any other question coming in the chat or the Q&A box. There was a previous question that's been answered by Giovanna. Thank you for that. Yeah, so I would say if you don't have any other question, I don't know if you can raise your hand or put your question in the chat. We can wait maybe a few seconds before we jump to the next part of the training, which is the case study. Exciting. Yeah. Okay. Well, I would say let's go then. Giovanna, I'll give the word to you to tell us a little bit more about the case study while I'll be preparing the breakout rooms.
Okay, thank you very much, Anna. And this is just that's the fun part, I guess, of the this training. It's just to give a little bit more context on, or a little bit hands-on experience now. If it is the first time for you guys, if it is the first, maybe have already experienced, but just gives you again a little bit of flavor how to validate and verify a project under the blue carbon and freshwater wetlands activity requirements, and in this case, the mangrove methodology. So the context here is you're part of a validation team, of course. Your role is to validate a mangrove plantation, to restore the degraded mangrove areas and establish new plantations to increase carbon sequestration capacity, as stated here in the context. So this is a project is in Kenya. This is a fictitious case study, of course, good to mention here. We have a contiguous area of additional 30 hectares is planned for rice cultivation. The project covers around about 90 hectares of wetlands and 30 hectares of degrading mangrove forest apart from the rice fields. And this is managed by the local communities in collaboration with NGOs and academic institutions. So this is a little bit the project overview. I'm not going to go into the project scenario just now because of due to time, but we have here the emission removals estimation around about 3 to 4 metric tons of carbon per hectare per year. Important information to keep in mind for the case study, and also the avoided emissions, which is estimated to 5 metric tons of carbon per hectare per year. So it gives you a little bit the context of our case study again. You're a company, Mangroves Forever is the name of the company. So yes, so have fun with the case study, and over to you, Anna, to give the instructions. Thank you.
Thank you, Giovanna. Yeah, so we'll be sharing this as well in the case study. We will be sharing a Microsoft Office form with you soon, and you can see all the case study information again, together with the instructions that I'm going to read to you right now. So you will be divided into breakout rooms, around I think 4 people per room. There might be a couple of rooms with only 3 people. You have 10 minutes. You will have 10 minutes time. And in the end, you discuss it together, and then you come up with one answer per group. When you are in the breakout room, please turn on your mic, turn on your camera, talk to your peers, and quickly decide on roles. We suggest 3 different roles. So one would be the facilitator, which is one leading the group and the discussion. Then one could be the presenter, so the person that shares the screen in the breakout rooms and then writes the finding on the form. And then once we're back to plenary, the person will present the findings. And then we will have a researcher or 2, basically the one who's going to read the case study details, identify the solutions, suggest anything. But all together, please work all together, discuss the findings and decide on the answers, and then prepare together the presenter. If you find yourself stuck, you cannot decide which role, then I would say the facilitator was the person who will be the person with the first name in alphabetical order will be the facilitator and will assign the roles to the others. One suggestion, if you're going to present afterwards, please, I would suggest do not submit your answers yet, because otherwise you will not see them anymore in your form. If you need any help, there will be a chat. So your breakout room will have a chat. Please send a quick message there with a few information on what you need. And then one of us will come to you for help. And once we come back to plenary after the 10 minutes, we will ask for voluntary. One presenter would like to share the results. If we don't have a voluntary, then I guess I'll pick a number from the breakout room and put you on the spot. So then afterwards, we will discuss the case. We will have time for more questions and talk about it even more. So here is the link. So you can either scan it with your phone, but you don't need to, because I am also going to put it in the chat. So I hope you can see it. And I think we're all ready. We're ready to go into breakout rooms right now. So I'm going to open the room now. Good luck and have fun.